Hi, welcome back to the channel. Michelle, and today I'm going to be doing a review of Torchlight Level 3 Innovation and Inquiry. I wanted to make a review video on this. This is our second year using Torchlight. We used Level 2 last year, and I'll link that up above. But I wanted to make a review video on this because I don't think there's a lot of review videos or people talking about the upper levels of Torchlight. I think a lot of people try out Torchlight in like the level K and then kind of drop it, and there's a difference between the levels. I will definitely say, now I've never tried level K. I started out with level 2 with my 10, well last year it was my 9 and 5-year-old. We've done level 3 with my 10 and 6-year-old this year. So I've never tried the younger levels, but there is formatting differences between the upper levels. And I do believe, if you check the Facebook website for Torchlight, there are planned updates to reformat those, but I definitely think there's a lot of value in the upper levels that you might have missed over the K or the younger levels. So I want to talk about this, and so how I'm going to do it is I'm going to show you some books that we incorporated with Torchlight Level 3, and then I'm going to show you some example lessons of scheduled lessons and how that went, and then I'm going to talk about the things I liked and didn't like about Torchlight Level 3. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is the ReadAlouds suggestions. Now I'm not going to show you them all, but I'm going to show you the ones I actually ended up purchasing because my library doesn't have it. One of the first things I do before purchasing Torchlight is I look through their book list and I see what's available on my library, what's available on Hoopla, Libby, YouTube, ReadAlouds, all those areas, because it is a heavy book list. So luckily a lot of the options were available at my library, so I only bought a handful of books to go with this year, but I'm going to just quickly show you some of the books included in Torchlight. So Shakespeare's Secret, this was my 10-year-old's favorite book from this past year. Again, you go over Shakespeare this year. George's Key to the Universe by Lucy and Stephen Hawking. I really like this. It was a really good introduction. Space and things like that we never really talked about much in our homeschool, so that was a really good introduction. We did an audiobook of this. Same with this. If you can get your hands on audiobooks, I think they're really the best way. I personally don't really enjoy reading out loud. It's tiring, and two, I think they do a much better job in the read aloud really portraying the characters than I can do. So a lot of this read aloud we did as audiobooks. Anna Strong and the Revolutionary War, Culper Sparring. And what's really cool about this is it came with different activities to do. So there's like a spy thing. You can look through the pages and find the hidden codes. And it tells you in here when to do it. You got to crack the code. So that was really fun. And of course, the great thing about Torchlight is they tie in the read-alouds with what you're learning in history. This was one we got as well. And again, I get all my books off Thrift Books. None of these are new. And this was a mystery, and it had ghosts and suspense, and it was actually really cool. And again, I suggest the read aloud for those. This was my 6-year-old's favorite book, ironically, of the year. It's a Trail of Tears story. It definitely talks about some hard history in here and some difficult parts, but I think it's important to talk about those things with kids in an age-appropriate way, and my 6-year-old actually really enjoyed the book, even though there were difficult parts. As she says, it made her feel everything, so she enjoyed that. This was another one we purchased that my library didn't have, and this was my 6-year-old's other favorite read aloud. And again, we had to do this as me reading because there was no audiobook, but I can obviously see why, because half the story is pictures. So those are a few snippets of the read aloud books that I purchased this year that my library didn't have. On to other ones. So throughout Torchlight, it gives you the opportunity to do each your U.S. history homework, and this was actually a lot of fun and something I wanted to purchase even though my library had it, because we're going to be doing U.S. history next year and I wanted to incorporate this as well. But not only does it give you recipes, but it gives you kind of historical knowledge of what was going on at that time, and then it gives you recipes. So what we actually did is when we were learning about this in history, we made ice cream, and the kids really enjoyed that. So I really do plan on incorporating this next year as we do United States history. I think it'll be really fun. A city through time. This is one that is often used in multiple levels of Torchlight. Same with When on Earth and A Child Through Time. We did not utilize either of these this year. It calls for it in Torchlight, but I think a couple times we used this, but this one I think was good, but it was, yeah, so this is the last one we would have read. And that was interesting to go through, especially with my 6-year-old. But When on Earth we didn't utilize. I just felt like there was a lot of information on each page and it was kind of overwhelming. And it was mostly a review of what we already talked about in history. So we often skipped this resource. This one we utilized a lot though, and my kids liked it. And again, this is used through multiple levels of Torchlight. So that's one of the spines I think is worth buying, in my opinion. So next is some to go with the innovation and inquiry theme. We read Fantastic Failures and Toys, Amazing Stories Behind Some Great Inventions. Again, this is focusing in on that invention, but also that growth mindset. The failure isn't, the difference between success is failures. Success is not giving up. So I really think this helped in the growth mindset. My kids really enjoyed learning the history of certain toys and how most of them just happen accidentally from something else. So we really did enjoy those. And then, like I said earlier, we did Shakespeare. Now this is, if you've seen it in my videos, this was kind of a miss. This goes over, the rhythm and memorization of Shakespeare plays, which we did the first one, Midsummer's Night's Dream, but after that we did not utilize the memorization that they talk about in this book, but we did talk about the passages. And this, I would say, was awesome. My kids all really enjoyed this. It's kind of a condensed version of all the Shakespeare plays, but it does not shy, and I really like the cast of characters because it can get confusing in a Shakespeare play, but it doesn't shy away from, the gorier side of Shakespeare. Let's see if I can find it. Yeah, here. So he stabbed him through the curtain. So I think the illustrations actually help the story. What I did do is every time we'd read a Shakespeare story, I would combine it with a YouTube video, a child-friendly YouTube video, kind of like a Spark Notes version of the play so they can get a more visual representation of it. And then when there were appropriate Shakespeare movies, like Midsummer's Night's Dream, we watched that as a family. So Shakespeare actually went really well this year. All right, now I'm briefly going to take you through my binder. Yes, I use a binder. I don't use any binding system. Binders work fine. Now I've gone through and taken everything out that, for example, the entire lessons for the year have been transferred to this folder here because it includes all of Curiosity Chronicles outline and everything that goes with there. So that gets stored until the next year, but this is the bare bones of what's left. So I wanted to show you how I kind of sort it. So I have tabs here. This should say current lesson, but my 3-year-old ripped it out. So I don't print everything off from Torchlight. I highly suggest you don't do that because you tend not to use every single element of Torchlight. And I'll get in that when I go over the outline of the schedule and everything, but it gives you a book list. Again, some of these we didn't use. We didn't use some of the suggested read alouds. We did do every single read aloud suggested here, so we did all those. But for a lot of the art, we didn't end up incorporating a lot of art. But one of the things I do is I make quick Excel spreadsheet of all the books, and then on the right-hand side, I put if it's at the library, if it's on Hoopla, if it's on Libby, or if it's something I'd have to purchase, and set amount of purchase. So that gives me ahead of time a look of how much this curriculum would actually cost me, not just buying the PDF. And then I do have the acronym sheet here because in the beginning I had to look at this a couple times to remember what they were talking about. But it does break down which books you read based on weeks, which I actually found really helpful. And of course, there are 36 weeks. And then this is where I would put my current lessons that we were doing. And I'll show you that in a minute. I do really like the lit primers in Torchlight. It gives you a lot of information because, again, a lot of the books I hadn't read before. So it gives you a quick outline of those. But it will tell you why it's included in here, the possible concerns, so any religious, violence, anything, any language used that would be possibly concerning, which is really helpful as a parent. Vocabulary that you would be going over if you did like a vocabulary spell book, which is included in the curriculum. And then it gives you not comprehension questions, but kind of critical thinking, deeper conversation, pulling out things from the story that you necessarily wouldn't have thought to ask your kids. So I really like these lit primers. It's not comprehension questions. It's diving a lot deeper than that, and it's leading that discussion, because again, a lot of these are talking about perhaps harder subjects that being able to talk about the emotional impact of that is really important. So it does that for all the books, all the ReadAlouds, which I really appreciate. And the last thing I have in the back, this is from something we used last year with Torchlight, and it's just, you know, evaluating resources and how to tell if something is truthful and fact-checking like that, that we use that for a couple different assignments. So that's the basis of my binder. So let me show you now the actual schedule. All right, now I'm gonna show you an outline of the weeks. So I'm gonna show you the first week, a week in the middle of the curriculum, and the week at the end. So as you can see, I've gone through and I'll show you what I don't use. I don't use the writing language arts portion of Torchlight, at least not level 3. So like editing, it gives you sentences you can edit, things like that. Writing opportunities, we don't use that. We have plenty of language arts that we don't need to incorporate that. Again, I don't incorporate anything that I consider busy work that isn't adding value. That's what I consider busy work. And for example, some of the books, if the library doesn't have them, you don't have to get them. You don't have to use them. So for example, Old Masters was an art book we didn't utilize. We did Women in Art, I think, the first couple weeks, but after that, I stopped using it, although it was available at the library. Do not use the science for Torchlight. It is Scientific Connections Through Inquiry. Nothing wrong with that science program. We just use core knowledge. It's free and it works for us. So we take that out, but I would include, for example, in some of the weeks, include science comics books or ReadAlouds to go with it. We would include those when we went through it, because it would still be beneficial information for us to know. I think it was about cars and things like that when we were designing cars. So we read about that. But you can see here, so Shakespeare's Secret, that's the book we would read, 1 to 3 chapters. And then we didn't do any of the language arts. And then this was the Shakespeare play, A Year Full of Stories, the thing I showed, a page out of an art book. Paint Lab, I really did enjoy this year. It's quick. We utilized it from Hoopla, so it's a digital copy I can't show you. But I think it's really simple lessons, and it's not crazy materials or anything like that. So this really helped us consistently do art every week. We ended up doing art twice a week. This is Curiosity Chronicles. Again, we did not do the Bard of Avon because I couldn't locate it at my library, which is completely fine. Your library doesn't have it, skip it. And this is chapter 2. So you do 2 chapters of Curiosity Chronicles every week. And I would also, when I bought Curiosity Chronicles, I would buy the editions that come with it. So like the coloring sheets and things like that, the teacher's guide and all that. You do not have to do that with Torchlight. Torchlight just has you read them. But I wanted to include the activities. A Child Through Time, I already showed you that, a page of that. Fantastic Failures. Innovators was a book, and it was also a book that had activities. For one of the activities we did like a germ research. So we did like slime and washing our hands to show how germs work. As you can see down here, I would quickly jot down, because I already made the list in this about where the ReadAlouds are coming from, and then I would say, okay, I would have a post-it, or eventually I just started writing it on the paper. This is the book, and this is when I'll need to get it. So again, it will give you a more detailed outline in these following pages. I didn't really utilize this. I would just every day look at this. But one thing I did utilize, which is on the back, is the extension activities. So I would go through, see if there's any books I wanted to use, any media. I would usually circle this. And then I would load it on my YouTube account and just have a playlist for Torchlight, which was really helpful. We watched a lot of great videos this year. It also has extension activities, so it's pick and choose the things you want to do and how detailed you wanted to do it. I did want to show what I got additionally from Curiosity Chronicles. This is not included in Torchlight, but I did include the teacher's guide and the student workbook or notebook, whatever it's called, but it came with coloring sheets. So when we would listen to Curiosity Chronicles, we would do the coloring sheets, and I really liked the comprehension questions and what do you think questions. Again, this is not included in Torchlight. This is something we added on. And then once a week, as you can see here, since you're reading 2 chapters a week, the second chapter, we'd always do the hands-on activities. So we learned about this, and this was the anamorphic art, and my kids actually really enjoyed learning how to make a 3D cube and 3D shapes. So that was an add-on that I chose to do to just kind of cement what they were learning. Of course, do not need to do that, but that's an example of the first week. Now I'm going to show you middle of the curriculum. So again, I do not do the vocabulary spell book. That is kind of like vocab, like looking up words and dictionary stuff. We don't do that. Peter and the Starcatchers, of course, was our read aloud. We don't do any of the language arts. This was Shakespeare. And again, I had, at the end of the week, we watched Romeo and Juliet on a bookmark, a YouTube link to it. For Curiosity Chronicles, we did the strategy battle, which was a lot of fun. But you can see I crossed these out because we did not have this in my local library. Didn't need to use it. We already went through this. We weren't going to repeat it because it does go over different women every section. But again, it's just little snippets. One thing about the art in Torchlight doesn't necessarily line up with any specific thing you're learning about in any of the other categories. So it's okay to drop it if you don't like it. Same thing with science. We dropped the science. And we kept the fantastic failures and toys and things like that. But again, it'll give you the same outline. And what I really liked was the extension activities. So extra books, media, extension activities. And then I would, because how this is laid out in my binder is this goes here with each level of Curiosity Chronicles. So whatever level we're on is directly behind this. That's why I suggest not printing it out all together, because obviously I changed it. I included Curiosity Chronicle activities behind this schedule for the week, and that just makes it easier for me. But I really enjoyed the activities in Curiosity Chronicles. So as you can see, we did that activity there. So that's the beginning, middle, and this was our last week. So same thing, read aloud. We didn't do the Shakespeare practice, the lines, we didn't do the language arts, we didn't do the art book. So again, you can pick and choose the things you want to do. So we do Paint Lab, we do the read aloud, we do the history, When on Earth, we do the fantastic failures, we do toys. You don't have to use all the curriculum. Is it worth it if you only use sections? To me, absolutely yes. It ties everything together really well, and what I really like is that Torchlight is based on a theme, not necessarily a particular time in history, although, you know, with Curiosity Chronicles, you will be going through specific history times, but everything's interconnected besides, I would say, the art. The art is not interconnected, but things are interconnected. So the read aloud, we were reading Sweep, which is about the child labor movement in London. At the same time, we were reading about that going on in history, which, again, it connects things. Same with your extension activities. We watched a lot of videos on different things going on in that period of time, or different Shakespeare explanations, things like that. It all ties together, I think, really, really well. And the last resource I want to share is, this comes with Torchlight, my big book of innovations, and it's just different things. They're given kind of like a story where they're the inventor's assistant and they have to come up with different things. So we did a lot of fun things through this. We created our own game. I talk about this more in my end of the year review. I will link that up above for you. But we made games, they designed a car, they composed music, they did a flavor profile and did some cooking. So it was a lot of fun. This is probably the highlight of the year because they just got to actually do a lot of hands-on stuff of the things we were talking about. And I'm not showing specifics because I'm pretty sure their names are all over this, so I'm not going to show the specifics of that. But if you want to see more detailed stuff, check out that review, end of the year review video. All right, so now we've looked at Torchlight, you've seen how I've utilized it, you've seen some of the resources. Now I want to talk about the things I liked and disliked about it. So obviously one of the things I love about Torchlight is the books. It's not just a glorified book list, although pulling from their book list is pretty amazing. it really cares about the child's voice, and in all these books you can really see that the child is struggling with emotions, or the main character is struggling with emotions or life situations. And I think that's really beneficial for kids, because I think books are a wonderful way to explore our emotions in different situations in a safe environment, and to bring up those difficult conversations and talk about them. So I think Torchlight does an amazing job with that. I love the lit primers because it's pulling out those little elements too. So I showed you some of the books we went through. I will share really quickly our favorites. Shakespeare's Secret, Endling was a big one at Catherine Applegate. We read all 3 of them, although Torchlight only has you read 1. Great book. All Rise for the Honorable Perry T. Cook, awesome book. Again, check out some of my review videos throughout the year, update videos. I talk more about that book as well. Edison, Me, Frida, and the Missing Peacock Ring, awesome book. How I Became a Ghost, and Sweep, those were some of our favorites. Quickly, some of the ones we did not like was Wild Robot. None of us like that book. I know it's really popular, but it just wasn't a hit in my house. Peter and the Starcatchers is kind of like a prequel to Peter Pan, and a great mythical, fantasy type thing. But it was just really hard for me to personally read, because every chapter kind of changes perspective. So sometimes you're talking from the pirates, sometimes you're talking from Peter's perspective, and it was just hard to go back and forth, and my kids got confused pretty easily on it. And the other one was Nest for Celeste. Again, a cute book, but not necessary in our opinion. No one really loved it. So some of the things I loved about Torchlight is most of the books I got from the library. As you can see, I only bought a handful, and some of them are from last year, like the When on Earth, where I already purchased. That's fine. So I think it is cost effective in that way. And again, you don't have to purchase or use every single book. As you see in my outline, I crossed some out because my library didn't have it. I'm not going to purchase it. Completely fine. Lit primers, already talked about those. Those are awesome. I do like that it's customizable. You don't have to use as is. Like I said, we took a lot of the art out besides Paint Lab, and that's completely fine. The curriculum can stand on itself with separate parts. You don't have to use it all in. It's not all encompassing. I really enjoyed Curiosity Chronicles. Again, I'll link up a review I have of that, of kind of Curiosity Chronicles in general and why I love it. But again, worldview, really enjoy the perspective. The only thing I would say is negative, which is in my negative category, is that because Torchlight released before Curiosity Chronicles Early Modern, the table of contents was mixed up. So it doesn't necessarily align, but it's going to be reformatted so it eventually does align. So for Torchlight Level 3, Curiosity Chronicles doesn't align perfectly. A lot of them do. I think there's a bunch of chapters that do. But there is in the Facebook Torchlight group, the Torchlight Facebook group, you can find a document in there that shows you, as you can see, most of all of them align. It's only when you get towards the end of the chapters that you need to start making some switches because they don't necessarily align than was scheduled in Torchlight. So again, right away in the beginning of the year, I just went through and I scratched off whatever chapter it said for that week and changed it to the correct chapter. So that is one of the only negatives I have. I talked about the extension links. I think they were awesome. We did a lot of YouTube links, a lot of TED Ed videos. We learned about food of the time. We looked at how their outfits were and how they got dressed. So I thought those were really awesome. For Curiosity Chronicles, again, Torchlight doesn't ask you to buy the extension activities, pack it with Curiosity Chronicles, but I chose to, and I think it did help. And we did some really fun projects. We made turtle ships, we did games, we learned about capoeira, we made candles, we made a globe, we played a capitalism card game, which was pretty fun. We made ice cream, we made maps, we did some cooking in the kitchen. We looked at constitutions and preambles and kind of dissected them. We made a golden bird machine. Again, check my end of the year family subject review if you want to see more on that. But I think adding in the activities from Curiosity Chronicles really did help, but isn't necessary. I talked about the Book of Innovations and what I really liked about that. Again, my kid's favorite part. I like that Torchlight makes a point to choose resources that emphasize female characters, so Curiosity Chronicles does that throughout, as well as a lot of the books. Great thing about Torchlight, read aloud books, are they emphasize people of color, they emphasize women. Those are the main characters you're having in there. It's not more classical literature, it's more contemporary, which I appreciate. I do enjoy the layout of everything. It's very in line in how my mind works. I've been asked, why I don't like other programs, and this is just the layout, the formatting of everything really is easy for me to cross out things I don't want to use, pull things I want to do, and it's organized in a way that works for me. So I really do like the organization. I think it is a little different in the younger grades. I do like that we talked about Shakespeare. I think bringing it in at this level was perfect, especially for that preteen age. And I was a little hesitant, how are my kids 6 and 10 going to deal with Shakespeare? They did awesome. Both of them really enjoyed the Shakespeare plays, and it kind of sparked an interest in my oldest, especially to learn more about Shakespeare and to read different plays. I really like that a lot of the suggested books outside of ReadAlouds that would relate more specifically probably to the history we were learning about brought other perspectives. So you're getting a ton of perspectives with Torchlight, with your history and your read aloud, and then bringing in additional resources. But a lot of them, for example, Curiosity Chronicles, we were talking about Lewis and Clark, and the expedition and all that, but it didn't mention every person in it. So one of the people not mentioned was a slave owned by Lewis or Clark, and how that slave was important. York, he was important to the expedition and the things he helped do. So that was a book that was suggested that we brought in as well, and I think that was great, that it's bringing in all those different perspectives. So those are a lot of the things I really enjoyed about Torchlight. Some of the things I didn't like, I already talked about how Curiosity Chronicles doesn't match up perfectly with the outline schedule provided. The science, again, nothing wrong with the science chosen, but it just wasn't for us, so we just took it out, which is completely fine. We did continue to do the activities suggested in the science sections. So for example, there was, when we were learning about Newton's 3 laws of motion, we did experiments that were suggested in Torchlight with a balloon and a string, and it was really fun. Same with Mary Anning's, we read the read aloud, but we didn't do the science part of it that was suggested in there. We did the read aloud, and then we did the suggested activity, which was making fossils using candle wax, which was really cool. And again, I said we incorporated science comics. So again, even within each group, you can pick and choose the things you want to use. Things we didn't use, vocabulary spellbook, I talked about that. I consider that more busy work, and we have other areas that we cover vocab in, so I didn't think that was necessary. Art is one of those things that it's a nice overview, a nice glance into it, but it doesn't necessarily tie into anything you're learning, and it gives a lot of historical art background, which I think is useful. And again, we really enjoyed Paint Lab, but it's take it or leave it, how you like it. And then the last is, it's obviously not open and go, at least the way I do it, because I do utilize different parts of it and not others. Make it what you want it to be. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. You can choose 2 things out of there to do, and that's completely fine. But having a basic outline and structure is something I need, especially to be accountable to the things I'm doing. And not in a way that, ooh, I gotta check this off, it stresses me out, but in a way that I know what's coming next and I can plan forward. I think one of the most important things you can do in your homeschool is be able to plan and lesson plan and prep prior, because your homeschool works so much smoother, and that's what this does for me. It helps me incorporate all these different perspectives and ideas. It's like doing unit studies, but not having to find all the information and pulling information that I know is credible. So I really do enjoy the structure of it. It works well for me. It keeps me in line for what I need to be doing, and it did require me to plan and prep some things ahead of time. Absolutely, but I think that's essential part of educating in general, is that you need to know what you're doing. I think there's very few things you can just open and go and it successfully work. So that is my review of Torchlight Level 3. Again, really enjoyed it. My kids are kind of sad we won't be incorporating it next year, and that's only because we're taking a different direction in history. We're going to actually be spending 2 years on U.S. history. So I do hope to incorporate the next level of Torchlight maybe after next year, but I would highly recommend looking into it. And again, choose what you want, use what you want, make it your own. If you have any questions, leave them down below. If not, thank you for watching.